Alright, hello to the other side of the screen. Uh, so I don't remember the last time I actually looked at your gameplay, Clo. I feel like it's been a while. Um, so I might be silent for a good portion of this in the beginning. Um, but who knows? Wanted to do Li Zhang first because you like King's Row significantly less. I think you like Li Zhang at least. Okay, so in looking at this fight, right, so it's getting a little bit chaotic from your side, and I think one of the things that we should look at first is your mechanics, because I think one of the things that becomes difficult for lower ranked players sometimes is that when the mechanics aren't as strong, it's really, really hard to keep track of the fight, right? So you track this Doomfist, not too great, but you at least get the similar pathing, and you keep him on your screen rather. So you know where he is. But then for some reason you kind of like, because your tracking I think was so wonky, you didn't feel confident in knowing where he was. You think you got a little bit disoriented, and then you kind of like look to the side where he isn't, and you wind up losing track of him and then backing up, and you have this little moment here where it's like you're not really doing anything. It's a little bit awkward, not sure what's exactly happening here. um, and now you're getting back into the situation, and then you have to like reassess and establish your positioning and get everything back into rhythm. So I think, oh hey, you just stopped playing Overwatch, interesting. So I think it might be something to look at, that in terms of your mechanics it might be difficult for you to keep track of what's going on in the fights because your mechanics are so raw right now, and they're so kind of like you're just starting to develop them. So I might be looking a lot at kind of your mechanics in this game and talking about things that we could do mechanically, because I think that some of the problems that I want to point out might be coming down to your ability to be aware of what's happening, which might be sourced down to your mechanics being a little bit raw. Because I think your bubble usage is a little bit poor at times. I think you bubble just off cooldown, which isn't always great. It's good that you're actively using the bubbles, but sometimes they could have better applications or better usage. So I think if we just maybe start with the mechanical part of Zarya and work from there, that we might be able to kind of like find something a little bit like a starting ground for you, let's say. There we go. Okay, so one of the things that I want to look at here, and this is a fairly good example spot for it, um, but we're going to start with working on your mechanics by enforcing some form of reticle discipline. So this is something that I've talked about where I think Greedy needs to work on this as well. And I think this is something that a lot of people just don't do. But essentially what's going to happen is that you are going to want to actively be placing your reticle in specific spots from moment to moment, even when you're not tracking people or not shooting at the enemy, to try to ensure that throughout the duration of the fight, you're going to get easier shots and easier looks at enemies, right? So we're gonna have this instance here, and then we're gonna look very slowly at this, where you're gonna rotate around this pillar, I'm pretty sure, in just a second. So looking at this in 2.5, by the way, so that you can see kind of like, take time to process what's actually going on. So what essentially happens is, for high level players, when they are not actively tracking someone or trying to click on them or do whatever, they keep their reticle very, very close to the corners of the walls and stuff like that. And what this allows them to do is it allows them to react very smoothly to when people come out of cover. So I actually didn't get my epic pen out, which is shame on me. I spelled spice somehow. Jesus Christ. How did I spell spice trying to get epic? Oh my god. Okay. Alright, so what is happening here is, let's say this is the border, right? So this is where enemies will appear from. They will come in this direction based off of where you're facing and where you're going. So this is like if you needed to react to someone coming into your line of sight, this is where they would be coming from right now. So essentially what you want to be doing is you want to keep your reticle, instead of over here, you want to keep it over here. And the reason is because when somebody shows up into your line of sight, over by this border area, essentially what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to flick your reticle over there and then begin tracking them, which requires you to have a two-step process where you have two chances of making a mistake. So we don't really care yet about kind of like, you know, any natural latent prodigal talent that you might have that we might be able to unearth and discover. We're not going to even focus on kind of like the base work of like grinding out like, oh, you know, track this tracer left and right, let's do this right now. Let's just start with the very, very simple, like moment to moment, what are you doing with your reticle and how hard are you making for you to aim? Because this is the most obvious thing for me is Widowmaker. But if you were a Widowmaker here and somebody popped into your line of sight, flicking this distance is much harder than already having your reticle there and just clicking, right? So we want to get you to a place where it's essentially all you're doing is just clicking. So notice how far the entire time your reticle is from this corner, and it's getting a little bit closer as you round the corner, and honestly you should be physically closer to this edge as well, but it's never really like consistently on that corner, and it makes it so that when you finally get within the line of sight of somebody, that okay, your reticle's on her there because she's super far back, but you have to like actively do something like that. If this brig was in good positioning, she would have been closer to this, and you would have had to actively like maneuver yourself to be able to hit her. It's weird because in this context, maybe it actually wasn't the best example because your reticle does wind up just being on the brig as soon as you get there. But with the angle that you're taking, a good player would have been closer to the wall so that they can close out line of sight easier, rather than where this brig is, where she can't do anything if you start tracking her well. So you would have had to swing around this corner, look here, and then swivel your reticles hard to the side. So we want to, I think this might be actually a two-step thing that we can incorporate, but I really want to focus on the reticle placement first. So first is going to be the reticle placement, keeping it actively on corners, and you know, this can, like, if nobody was here, you could keep it here, and then if you want to like walk around this corner, you keep your reticle on the corner as you walk around it to try to, like, you know, make sure that if anybody peeks from around the corner, you can very quickly and accurately just start tracking them. But look in this situation even actually, where it's like your reticle, because your reticle was on the brig, even though you don't stay tracking the brig, you're consistently hitting someone, you know? And you're able to switch between because your reticle's already on those people. So we really want to start with this reticle discipline, and kind of just going into more detailed look on how we move moment to moment. So actually what we can do here, because I have the whole screen up, is we're gonna go look real quick. We're gonna take a second. YouTube. We're going to take an exploration together. We're going to go on an adventure. Jake, Overwatch, Decay. I really like these. I highly, highly suggest these.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the...
We don't actually care about the audio. Sorry, Jake. No. Did I just hit next? I'm big brain. Alright. I just want to see a moment in transition. Maybe this wasn't the best video to go look for with how chaotic these fights tend to be. And how low resolution this is seeming to play at right now. Okay. So here we go. Absolutely nothing is happening. God damn it, Jake. Okay, this isn't a good example. Shit. Sorry, gameplay. Okay, maybe Hard Blue can show us. If you don't know Harblu, he's a great off-tank player. Great off-tank player. So here we really want to look at where his reticle is. And I don't know for sure how well Harblu does this, but we're going to try to see how much he does it and see how much it might help his aim. He also has incredible aim, and he's also streaming right now, so you can see right now he's like tabbed out. He's not really paying attention to the game. It's really hard to find good examples of this stuff. But look at how his reticle always kind of snaps from corner to corner, right? It maybe isn't precisely on, but his reticle is always in some way aligned to some corner that he wants to be aiming at, right? There's never a moment where he's like, looking at corner A, but his reticle is in wall B. His reticle is on the corner, and he's aiming for the corner. And it really helps him just keep a steady, kind of like consistent, it helps him just be consistent in his mechanics. That's really what we're looking for right here. We're not looking for stellar mechanics. We're looking for consistent mechanics right now. So even on his way out, close to the wall, hugging the corner with his reticle where he can, and then a play is going to be made and he's going to start going in. So don't know if that actually wound up being a good example or not, but let's just keep looking at your gameplay now for a little bit longer. Just with the idea in the future that hugging the wall with your reticle is going to be something that we want to like start doing, Similarly, like I said, you want to then be hugging, like that step 2 I was going to get into, is you want to be hugging walls with your body. This will just make it so that it's easier for, I've said it again and again and again, and I'm going to keep saying it. It's going to make it so that, it's easier for you to open and close angles onto enemies, which will make it so that you can choose, like, oh, I'm low, okay, I'm closing the angle, you can't hit me now. But, like, look how out in the open you were there, the Doomfist punches you, he gets you low, and then essentially there's nothing you can do because you've compromised your positioning by going out into the middle of nowhere. And that's not to say you don't want to go out into the middle of nowhere ever, but you just want to be aware of when you're doing it and why you're doing it. It's basically going to be a trade-off. So, like, if you're claiming space and you need to traverse an open area, then, the space that you're traversing, one, you have to know how to do it safely. You have to use your cooldowns to get from space to space. And then you also have to know why you're taking that space. Like, it has to actually be worth something, So let's keep this as kind of like a number 1. Like, oh, why, what to work on. What I would like you to do, honestly, is, I guess spacebar isn't going to, there we go. What I would like you to do is, I think this is what I think everybody needs to do, for anybody who might happen to watch this for whatever reason. You need to go into games and you need to have a concrete, idea that you're going to execute. So you need to go into games and you need to say, if I win, if we lose, that it would be nice to win. We're going to try to win. It's not that we're throwing. But the real goal of this game is to stay very disciplined in my reticle placement and make sure that throughout the entire map, I'm constantly keeping it on some type of corner. Because as you do that, you're going to ingrain it into your natural muscle, your muscle memory, and you're going to make it so that it's something you do normally without extra hassle, which it's a good baseline structure for you to work on and work from later on when we get into maybe more mechanically demanding things, or when you get into tough situations. You always want a good set of fundamentals to kind of fall back on and depend on. So we really want to be going into practices and saying, or like not just practices, but like you go into ranked games and you say, okay, today I'm going to make sure that my positioning always close to a wall, always close to a corner. I always want to be able to run away. I just want to play super duper safe. I don't care about getting kills. I'll try to get as many kills as I can, but I'm going to do it from safe positioning because my goal today is to learn how to play safe, right? And you kind of do those things, and then you ingrain them into your muscle memory day by day. And if they're helping you, then it's good. That's what we want. That's the goal. Is I'm supposed to be prescribing you good things that help you. But also then, if you then start going into games and you're like, okay, I don't need to actually concentrate on this anymore. It's just like happening. Then you start working on the next step, right? So we can also identify things like you're struggling to get energy right here, and I think that comes down to your bubble, who you're choosing to bubble and when. I think you're struggling to push in without a team, but I think that comes down partially to your positioning. And I think your bubble choice right now comes a little bit down to your mechanics, because you're getting very, very lost in the sauce of the game, and it's becoming difficult for you to keep track of things. Something that I've noticed while kind of like climbing, especially while climbing on PC, where my mechanics are like starting from the base again, is that it's much easier to become overwhelmed in games when you don't have the ability to effectively deal damage to the enemies. I think that there's a correlation between the amount of damage that you can output and the amount of kind of like control you have over a game. And that's not just to say like, oh yeah, duh, if you can get kills you can carry. It's also to say like, it's a lot easier to play against the enemy tanks if they can't just jump at you with all of their abilities, because they're scared of what you can do, right? So the overwhelming things that the enemies can do to you if you can't deal equal damage or adequate damage will show over the course of a game. And I think that's partially what's happening right here, is that you're not dealing as much damage as the enemy tank, so the Winston and the Roadhog aren't scared of you. They're not scared of your charge, they're not scared of your ability to chunk them down, the Mercy isn't even trying too hard to run away from you. So it's like your inability to do damage makes it so that the game is overwhelming, because everybody's just like pushing into you without a care. So we want to kind of like up that damage to be able to up that control of the flow of the game, to be able to improve that bubble usage so things are a little bit more concrete, and then we want to improve that positioning so that we can improve that solo play and then keep that survivability at like tip-top kind of condition. So where, we want you to be playing like every now and again you have a game where you're like, I just didn't fucking die. They just couldn't kill me. I don't know why, it just popped off. You have like a game every 2 or 3 months or something like that. So we want to try to get to that point where you just die as little as possible, deal as much damage, and then we'll work kind of into more of your play style. So I'm going to largely let this play out. Some of these videos, I mean, I did the same thing for Alexis and STT. I think we're at like 10 minutes or something like that, not even. Oh, 15 minutes. Okay, you actually got it. I had to watch more stuff for you than I did for either of them. But I've been observing you guys for a little bit of time. I just needed a platform like this where we could like go in and just specifically look at your gameplay. And then, I can give you some pointers things. So that was the end of the round, actually. We're just going to leave it at that. I'm going to look through the rest of it on my own, but this is all I'm going to send you, because I want you to take this, and then I want you to actually start working. I don't want you spending hours and hours just watching VOD reviews. You guys need to start working on, getting those muscle memory down and things like that. So 17:45 or whatever it's going to end up, I'll see you in the Discord. I'll see you in announcements. Till next time.